The court sealed Maren Voss's ember safety stencils in a silver box because warning marks looked ugly beside gold banners. 3 steps beyond the unmarked line, a man could breathe fire into his lungs and die without a flame ever touching his skin. That morning, King Rhydan Vale was expected to cross the Dragon Forge Walkway before 7 foreign noble houses, 12 royal witnesses, and every forge official needed to sign the new alliance. If the walkway failed, the foreign houses would not sign the forge alliance. Without their ore routes, Rhydan's border dragons would fly hungry before winter. Maren stood with her left wrist locked inside a silence clamp. The device was small, elegant, and cruel. A polished ring of black brass circled her wrist and pinned her fingers half closed, not enough to look like punishment before foreign guests, but enough to keep her from opening the stencil box, touching a pressure seam, or pointing at the place where death waited. Safety Marshal Corven Malric pressed the last lock over her stencil box. The box was not beautiful. It was black iron under old soot, scarred by years of use. Its lid burned with half-moon curves, pressure forks, breath warnings, and worker tally marks. Maren had carried it across slag bridges, furnace mouths, ash ramps, and narrow heat lanes where the stones sweated before fire pressure rose. She did not read flame. She read the places where flame had not yet admitted itself. To the court, that work looked like a stain. Corven called it exactly that. A stain on His Majesty's coronation path, he said, smooth enough for the foreign houses to admire. The Dragon Forge Walkway was built to display royal mastery over flame, not frighten alliance witnesses with worker scratches. Several nobles laughed from beneath their gold-edged veils. Maren did not look at them. She looked past the polished walkway to the 3rd black seam in the floor, where the stone had dried too fast. Invisible pressure lived there. She had marked it twice. Corven had scrubbed it twice. A bellows boy had lost his voice there last winter before he died, choking on heat no one could see. Rhydan Vale stood at the head of the walkway, in black ceremonial armor, his crimson mantle clasped by a dragon jaw of gold. He was not crowned yet for the forge walk. The crown waited on a pedestal beyond the furnace arch, where the foreign houses would cheer when he reached it unmarked. The order to keep the walkway clean had not come from Corven. It had come from Rhydan's own coronation decree. No worker marks on the royal path, no soot lines, no hazard forks, no death zone warnings visible before noble witnesses. That was what hurt. Not that the nobles mocked her. Nobles mocked anything that smelled of work. It hurt that Rhydan looked at the sealed stencils and saw his decree obeyed. Corven lifted the silver key. By martial authority, Maren Voss is forbidden to mark, stain, scratch, burn, paint, carve, gesture toward, or otherwise deface the royal forge path until the alliance walk is complete. I did not deface it, Maren said. I marked where men died. Corven turned with a sorrowful smile. No deaths are recorded on the coronation path, because you moved the bodies to maintenance reports. The laughter stopped too quickly. Corven's smile remained, but his thumb pressed hard against the key. There, not fear, not yet, a warning of it. Rhydan's gaze shifted to her. For the first time that morning, he did not look at the box. He looked at her mouth, as if measuring whether a clamped stencil keeper would accuse a royal marshal without proof. Names, he said. Maren felt the word like a blade offered handle first. Perrin Holt, she said. Bellows crew. 3rd seam. Lungs burned without flame. Tama Helt, ash sweep. South pressure fork. Found kneeling because the heat took her balance before her skin marked. Joss Merritt, chain boy, dead before anyone saw the air shimmer. Corven sighed. Unverified lower accidents, Your Majesty. None on the noble walkway. The noble walkway was built over their work lane, which was corrected before inspection. Scrubbed, Maren said. Corven took 1 step closer and lifted her clamped wrist for the court to see. And this is why restraint was necessary. She cannot distinguish warning from accusation. The black brass clamp tightened. Pain shot through Maren's fingers, but she did not lower her eyes. Rhydan's hand moved once. Release the clamp, the Dragon King said. It was a small command, almost nothing, and far too late to be called kindness. Corven inclined his head. Of course, Your Majesty. But if worker panic stains the path before the foreign houses sign, the Forge Alliance fails before it begins. Maren looked at Rhydan. Fire pressure does not wait for signatures. A noblewoman behind a pearl veil murmured, "How charming." A safety sermon. Corven raised the sealed box for the court to see. The stencils will remain locked until the king completes the walk. A clean path proves a stable forge. A stable forge secures the alliance. After. Maren hated the word even when no one spoke it. After was when widows learned where men had stood. After was when records lost names. After was when officials called danger unfortunate. Rhydan turned toward the walkway. The forge arch opened before him, a long black stone bridge suspended between two walls of sleeping dragon fire. Its surface had been polished until it reflected the banners. No red marks, no warning forks, no breath lines, no ugly truth. "Proceed," Corven said. Maren pushed her freed fingers open, though pain still burned through the joints. "Do not take the third seam." Rhydan paused. Corven laughed softly. "Your Majesty, if you stop for every lower warning, alliance law becomes hostage to ash superstition." Rhydan's eyes stayed on Maren. "What is at the third seam?" he asked. "Pressure without flame. Visible?" "No." "Recorded?" Inside the box, he sealed. Corven's voice sharpened. "Enough." Rhydan looked at the spotless walkway again. "Warnings do not rule a coronation," Rhydan said. "Proof does." Then he stepped forward. One pace. Tfo. The silver box in Corven's hands clicked. Maren heard it. So did Corven. The third step landed. The sealed stencil box began to smoke. Not because it had awakened like a charm, because even locked away, the stencils were still recording pressure. Red light burned through the seams. The silver key in Corven's hand turned black. Every engraved warning on the box lid flared at once. Half-moon curves and pressure forks rearranging into the hidden map Maren had marked before it was scrubbed away. Rhydan stopped at the third seam. For a heartbeat, nothing touched him. Then red warning marks burned across his right arm. They appeared over skin and armor together, bright as fresh brands. A pressure fork at the wrist, a breath line up the forearm, a death zone crescent wrapping beneath the elbow. The nobles rose from their seats. Corven moved at once. "The stencil has contaminated His Majesty's armor," he said. "This is assault disguised as warning." Maren stared at the marks on the Dragon King's arm and felt no triumph, only terror, because the stencil had not chosen him. It had only obeyed the old rule Maren had written in ash: mark the first living body inside a dead man's line. The first mark moved before anyone touched the king. It crawled from Rhydan Vale's wrist toward his elbow in a thin red line, not like blood, not like flame, but like a warning drawn by a hand that had stopped asking permission. The pressure fork widened across his gauntlet. The breath line split into 3 smaller branches. The death zone crescent tightened around his forearm until the black dragon scale armor beneath it began to smoke. Foreign nobles rose behind their carved railings. One of them whispered in a northern court tongue, but fear needed no translation. Rhydan did not flinch. That made the court more afraid. A king who screamed could be comforted. A dragon king who stood still while danger wrote itself across his body looked less like a victim than a verdict waiting to be read. Corven Malric stepped between Rhydan and the witnesses. "The stencil has contaminated His Majesty's armor," he said, his voice sharpened but still controlled. "This is assault disguised as warning. Remove her before the Alliance witnesses mistake sabotage for safety law." 2 forge guards seized Maren by the arms. She did not fight them. Fighting would turn Corven's lie into theater. Instead, she looked at Rhydan's marked arm. "The line is moving because you are still inside it." Corven swung toward her. Silence. "The stencil is not attacking him. It is mapping pressure." "Enough." Maren lifted her chin. "Step off the death zone before proof burns through your lungs." The words landed harder than a plea would have. Rhydan's eyes fixed on hers. There was pain in his face now, but not enough. Not yet. Pain was only the body learning what workers had been told to endure quietly. "Hold here," Corven ordered. Rhydan's voice cut through him. "Release her." The guards froze. Corven turned. "Your Majesty." "Release her." They did. Maren pulled her sleeves straight with shaking fingers and did not thank him. He had not granted mercy. He had interrupted a second mistake. Rhydan stepped backward. The red crescent on his arm stopped tightening. 1 pace farther. The pressure fork dimmed. A sound moved through the court, low and unsettled. Not admiration, calculation. The foreign houses had come to watch a clean coronation path. Instead, they were watching the Dragon King obey a worker's warning in front of them. Corven saw that damage at once. "Your Majesty," he said, "if you appear to submit to an unlicensed stencil keeper, the Alliance will question whether the forge is under crown control." One of the foreign lords spoke from beneath a silver veil. "We already question it." Rhydan turned his head. The lord did not bow. "If invisible pressure can reach the king on his own coronation walkway, what guarantee do we have that your border dragon forges are stable?" Another witness added, "And if your own safety marshal calls warning sabotage, what else has been hidden for ceremony?" Corven's jaw tightened. Maren watched him absorb the threat, reorder it, and aim it elsewhere. "The only hidden danger," Corven said, "is a worker system allowed to frighten foreign houses with unverified death markings. The royal walkway was inspected. The official path is clean." "Because you scrubbed it," Maren said. "Because His Majesty decreed it." The court went still. Corven had spoken the truth on purpose. Rhydan's gaze dropped to the polished stone beneath his boots. No marks, no warning forks, no soot lines, no death crescents. The clean path he had ordered was shining back at him like a blade. Maren saw the moment he understood the shape of his own decree. No worker marks on the royal path. It had sounded ceremonial when written above. It had become permission below. Rhydan looked at Corven. "Bring the death reports." Corven did not move. "The inspection schedule. Now, the death reports are maintenance records. They have no place before Foreign Alliance witnesses. Then every witness will learn what my court kept from them." The foreign nobles leaned forward. Corven's mouth thinned. "Your Majesty, if lower maintenance deaths are recited during the forge walk, the Alliance may collapse. If the Alliance requires unmarked graves, it deserves to collapse." The words struck the court like a hammer on hot iron. Maren felt no warmth from them. Warmth was dangerous. Kings could speak one true sentence and still leave the next door locked. A pair of clerks hurried from the record alcove with a narrow stack of ash-gray ledgers. Corven reached for them first. Rhydan caught his wrist. Not violently, precisely. "You will not select the pages." Corven's eyes met his. For the first time, the marshal's polish showed a seam. Rhydan took the top ledger himself and opened it on the black stone rail beside the walkway. The mark on his arm pulsed as if reading with him. "Perrin Holt," he said. Maren did not breathe. "Bellows crew, lung failure during unauthorized lower repair." She stepped closer. "Read the location." Rhydan's eyes moved lower. "Former East Work Lane, current ceremonial walkway, third seam." The red line on his arm brightened. A foreign noble murmured. The stencil confirmed the death site. Corven snapped the ledger shut with one hand. Rhydan opened it again. "Tamahelt," Maren said. "The Dragon King found the name. Ash, sweep, collapse from heat exposure, reported in South Maintenance overflow. Read the correction mark." "There is no correction mark." Maren held out her freed hand. "Because he scraped it," Corven spoke over her. "Or because she invents patterns after tragedy." Maren looked past him to the sealed silver stencil box. Smoke still escaped through the locks. The warning patterns on its lid were shifting now, no longer circling, only the third seam. Half-moon curves, joined pressure forks. Breath lines stretched forward along an invisible path, toward the furnace arch, toward the pedestal where Rhydan's crown waited. Her stomach tightened. "Open the box," she said. Corven went very still. "No." Rhydan heard that no. So did every foreign house. Maren did not look away from the moving patterns. The death zone does not end at the third seam. The mark on Rhydan's arm flared. A new red line appeared across his shoulder, reaching toward his throat. The sealed stencil box burned hotter, its patterns rearranging into a single path across the polished walkway. Rhydan followed Maren's gaze. The line ran straight to the crown pedestal. Maren's voice lowered. "If you keep walking, the crown will stand inside the dead men's line." The crown pedestal began to sweat. Not with water. The black stone beneath the waiting crown gathered a thin copper sheen, bright and slick under the forge lights, as if heat were rising through it from a place the court had been told did not exist. Maren saw it before the nobles did. Corven Malric saw it a breath after her. That was why he moved. The stencil has marked the crown path because she trained it to do so, he said, turning sharply toward the foreign houses. This is not safety. This is regicide, staged in red. The word struck the court cleanly. Regicide. Several guards shifted toward Maren. Rhydan Vale's marked arm burned brighter, the red line now reaching beneath the edge of his shoulder guard. Pain pulled once at his mouth, but he did not give it sound. Maren pointed with her freed hand toward the sweating pedestal. The stone is warning before the stencil does. Corven snapped. She points where she wants fear to look. No, Maren said. I point where men died. A guard stepped in front of her. Rhydan's voice stopped him. Stand down. Maren turned on the Dragon King so quickly, the guard froze harder than he had before. Do not defend me. Read the line your crown is standing on. The words cut through the small protection he had offered and left it exposed for what it was. Not justice, not yet. Only hesitation before another official lie could close. Rhydan's eyes held hers for one dangerous second. Then he looked to the ash-gray ledger, still open against the rail. Read the decree. Corven's jaw tightened. Your Majesty, this is not the time to give sabotage a legal stage. The decree, Rhydan said. A record clerk searched the lower stack with trembling fingers. Corven watched each page turn as if he could still command ink by staring at it. The clerk found a sheet edged in crimson wax and bowed so low his forehead nearly touched the stone. Rhydan took it himself. His burned arm pulsed when the paper neared him. No worker marks on the royal path, he read. No soot lines, hazard forks, breath warnings, death crescents, or obstruction patterns may be visible before foreign witnesses during coronation inspection. Corven spoke at once. Aesthetic order only. Maren's laugh came out small and cold. Aesthetic orders do not erase lungs. Rhydan kept reading. Any unauthorized mark found on the coronation path may be classified as visual contamination and removed by martial authority before alliance witness arrival. The foreign houses stirred. There it was. Not only a clean path, permission to call every warning a stain. Permission to scrub danger and punish the hand that tried to show it. Rhydan looked up from the decree. Maren saw the blow land. Not enough to wound him clean. Enough to make him understand that his own words had been sharpened by Corven and used below. Corven stepped in smoothly. Visual contamination refers to unauthorized symbols. It protects foreign witnesses from panic. The forge must display order, or no alliance can stand. The forge did not display order, Maren said. It displayed absence. Absence is not proof. Then open the box. Corven's hand tightened around the blackened key. The box is contaminated. The box is recording. The box is evidence of assault against the king. Maren looked at Rhydan's marked arm, then let the evidence finish speaking before it reaches his throat. The red line had climbed higher. It now touched the lower edge of his neck, thin as a blade of heated wire. Foreign nobles leaned away from him, as if a king, marked by his own walkway, might make alliance dangerous by proximity. Rhydan held out his hand to Corven, the key. Corven did not surrender it. That refusal did more than Maren's accusation had. It made the foreign houses look not at her, but at him. The Safety Marshal refuses the Dragon King? One northern lord asked softly. Corven bowed without lowering his eyes. I refuse to help a saboteur complete a staged pattern around His Majesty's crown. Rhydan stepped closer. The warning mark on his neck flared. Maren moved before pride could kill him. She caught his unburned wrist and pulled him back from the line. The court inhaled, as one. No one touched the Dragon King like that. Maren let go immediately. You are standing where Perrin Holt fell. Rhydan looked down at the floor beneath his boot. The polished stone was clean. Too clean. His voice lowered. Open it without the key. Corven smiled then, faint and sharp. She cannot. That clamp prevented her from using official touch sequence. Maren looked at the box. At the locks. At the moving pressure, forks burning beneath the sealed lid. The stencils did not need beauty. They did not need permission. But they did need the old rule. Mark pressure by contact. Mark death by witness. Mark erased danger by the nearest living body inside the line. She knelt before the box. The guards reached for her. Rhydan said, no one touches her. Again, too little. Again, useful. Maren pressed her burned fingers flat against the floor. not the box. The walkway is the stencil now, she said. Corven's expression shifted. Not much. Enough. She dragged her fingertips through the copper sheen spreading from the pedestal. The heat bit deep. Red marks followed her touch across the black stone, not drawn by her hand but released beneath it. Half-moon curves appeared first, then pressure forks, then breath lines crossing one another at angles too deliberate to be panic. Foreign nobles stood. Workers gathered near the rear arch stopped breathing. The polished walkway began to remember what had been scrubbed from it. Perrenholt's third seam, Tamahelt's south fork, Josmerit's chain lane. More marks came after those. Too many. Names did not appear yet, only death zones, scraped, polished, hidden, aligned beneath the coronation path like bones beneath a carpet. Corven spoke fast. Your Majesty, if you allow this display, the Alliance will interpret the forge as unstable. Maren did not stop. The forge is unstable. The stencil box burst open. Not upward, outward. Its iron sides unfolded like burned wings, and the stencils inside rose into the air, flat strips of blackened copper glowing at every cut edge. They arranged themselves above the walkway in a pattern no court decorator had ever designed. A crown, not Rhydan's crown. A warning crown. Every death line curved toward the pedestal. Every pressure fork bent around it. Every breath warning crossed beneath the place where the Dragon King was supposed to stand and be witnessed as master of the forge. The foreign nobles stared in horror. Maren rose slowly, her burned hand shaking. The crown was not placed beside the danger, she said. The red map tightened around the pedestal until it formed a complete ring. It was built over the largest death zone. A foreign witness dropped his signing quill. It rolled across the polished black stone and stopped at the edge of the warning crown, where the copper sheen had begun to bubble. No one bent to retrieve it. The Dragon Forge Walkway no longer looked clean. It looked skinned. Red pressure forks burned across the path in hard, precise angles. Half-moon death zones curved around the crown pedestal. Breath lines crossed under the royal arch and vanished beneath the stone, where Rhydan Vale's coronation crown waited, untouched and suddenly obscene. Maren Voss stood with her burned fingers held away from her body, because closing them would mean feeling the pain. Corven Malric found his voice first. This is a calibration distortion, he said. Old forge lines sometimes echo beneath ceremonial stone. The stencil keeper has released unstable work marks in front of Alliance witnesses and presented them as deaths. Maren did not look at him. She watched the warning crown. A death zone did not form a shape unless pressure had been forced to repeat itself. Once was accident. Twice was negligence. A ring meant men had kept walking into the same invisible mouth until the floor learned the pattern better than the officials did. Rhydan stepped toward the pedestal. The red mark on his throat flared. Maren turned sharply. Stop. He stopped. Not because he liked being commanded, because the burn had reached the line where breath became difficult. Corven saw the foreign witnesses watching that obedience and struck at it. Your Majesty, this woman is now directing royal movement on a coronation path. If you allow her to continue, the Alliance will believe the crown submits to lower superstition. Maren's voice stayed flat. The crown is standing over a pressure grave. Unproven. Then move the pedestal. A ripple passed through the court. The crown pedestal was not an object. It was a symbol. Black dragonstone, gold-veined, consecrated by 7 forge oaths and polished by generations of coronations. Moving it before a king completed his walk would announce to every noble house that the ceremony had failed. Rhydan looked at the pedestal, then at the red ring burning around it, then at Maren. There was a question in his face again. Not soft, not pleading. Dangerous, because he was finally measuring cost. Maren answered before he asked. Do not ask me to make this easier for you. His jaw tightened. Good. Ease was how dead men became maintenance. Rhydan turned toward the forge guards. Move the pedestal. Corven stepped in front of them. I formally object under Alliance stability law. Record your objection. If the pedestal is disturbed, the foreign houses may withdraw. Rhydan's marked arm flexed at his side. Then they will withdraw from a forge that can survive being seen. The northern lord behind the silver veil leaned forward. We will not sign until the stone is opened. Corven's face did not change, but his eyes moved. To the record alcove, Maren saw it. He was not afraid of the pedestal alone. He was afraid of what had been filed away before it was placed. "Bring the Walkway Foundation records," she said. Corven turned. "You do not command court records." "No," Maren said, "but the warning crown is pointing at them." Rhydan looked to the clerks. "Bring them." "A clerkron." Another hesitated near Corven. Rhydan's eyes cut to him. "All of them." The clerk fled. Corven's voice lowered. "Your Majesty, you are allowing an accused saboteur to turn a coronation into an inquest." "No," Rhydan said. "I allowed a coronation to be built over an inquest." The words did not cleanse him. Maren did not let them. She stepped closer to the pedestal, stopping at the safe edge of the red mark. "Read the foundation date when it comes." Rhydan looked at her. She saw the thought before he spoke it. That he did not know. That he had trusted the office. That he had signed what was placed before him. She gave him no shelter. "If your seal is there," she said, "read that too." The foundation ledgers arrived bound in pale, heat-proof hide. The clasps had not been opened in years. Dust clung to the seams in a gray crust. One clerk cut the tie with a shaking knife and spread the first page across a stone table. Corven moved beside him. "These records are structural, not mortal." Maren pointed to the lower margin. "Then why is the death tally scraped?" The clerk froze. The margin had been rubbed thin where numbers should have stood. Someone had taken a blade to the page, then polished the damage with ash to make it look like age. Rhydan bent over the ledger. The red marks on his arm pulsed in time with the hidden lines on the walkway. "Foundation revision," he read. "Work lane relocated beneath Crown approach. Visual irregularities to be removed before Alliance inspection." Maren's Stomach sank. "Read the authority." Rhydan's eyes did not leave the page. "Coronation Decree Office." "Read the seal." He was silent for one breath too long. Maren knew then. So did Corven. Rhydan said, "Dragon Crown." The foreign witnesses murmured. Corven spoke into that sound. "A standard seal for ceremonial preparation. It does not imply His Majesty knew every maintenance concern." Maren stepped to the table. "Read the classification." Rhydan's burned hand flattened on the ledger. His voice became colder. "Death warnings near Crown. Approach to be classified as visual contamination until after Alliance witness signing." There it was. Not merely absence. Instruction. A legal name for erasure. Corven inclined his head as if saddened. "Signed in the rush of coronation stability, Your Majesty. Necessary language to prevent panic." Maren looked at Rhydan. "Necessary for whom?" He did not answer. The forge guards set chains around the pedestal. 4 men pulled. The dragonstone base resisted, then groaned across the floor. Heat breathed out from beneath it. A smell rose with it. Copper, old ash, and something human that ceremony had failed to bury. Beneath the pedestal lay a flat iron plate sealed into the walkway foundation. Dozens of worker thumb marks blackened its edges. At the center, a warning stencil had been hammered face down into the metal, as if someone had tried to silence it by making it carry the crown's weight. The stencil box behind Maren rang once. The hidden plate answered. Red letters burned up through years of pressure, 43 unrecorded. Then another line emerged below it. "Do not crown above us." The foreign witnesses stepped back from the exposed plate, as if the dead might rise through iron. 43 unrecorded. The words burned without flame, red enough to stain the underside of every gold banner above them. Around the plate, the worker thumb marks blackened and brightened one by one. Not names yet, only proof of touch. Men and women had pressed their hands there before the pedestal was lowered. Not to bless the crown. To warn it. Maren Voss did not kneel. Her burned fingers trembled, but she kept them open at her sides. If she closed her hands now, she might feel the pain too clearly, and pain had work to do before it was allowed to own her. Corven Malric stepped over the nearest red line. The mark on Rhydan's throat flashed. Maren snapped, "Do not." Corven stopped with one boot suspended above the plate's edge. For a heartbeat, the court saw him obey her warning before he could pretend he had chosen to pause. His face hardened. "Unauthorized worker markings beneath a royal pedestal," he said. "This is not evidence. It is sedition buried under ceremony." A foreign lord behind a silver veil answered before Rhydan could. "Sedition does not usually predict where a king's skin will burn." Corven turned toward him with a polished bow. "Foreign houses are not trained in forge contamination law." No, Maren said. But they can count to 43. The words cut small and clean. Rhydan stood beside the moved pedestal, his right arm marked from wrist to throat. He had not removed his armor. The red warnings crossed dragon scale steel and bear skin alike, refusing to respect rank, metal, or pain. His gaze remained on the exposed plate. Who installed it? He asked. Corven replied too quickly. Workers did, during unlawful obstruction of the coronation path. Maren looked at the hammered stencil face down in the center of the iron plate. Its edges were crushed, but the pattern beneath still pulsed. No, that is an old pressure witness stencil. Corven's mouth tightened. There it was. Not fear in the broad sense, fear of a specific word. Witness. Rhydan heard it. Explain. Maren stepped to the safe side of the plate. Before coronation paths became clean, every forge approach needed a pressure witness, someone who could mark invisible force before flame showed itself. If a death zone formed, ceremony stopped until the dead were recorded and the pressure was bled. Corven laughed softly. A dead custom, a buried law, Maren said. He turned toward Rhydan. Your Majesty, this is how sabotage survives. Workers dress obstruction as old law and expect kings to kneel before ash. Maren's eyes stayed on the stencil. No king has to kneel to ash. He only has to stop standing on it. Rhydan's jaw moved once. Not apology. Not forgiveness. Impact. Bring the old forge code, he ordered. Corven's head turned sharply. The old code was superseded by coronation stability reforms. Then bring both. A clerk ran toward the record alcove. Corven followed him with his eyes, then looked back at Maren's burned hand. She cannot touch that stencil. If it is truly old witness metal, contact by an uncertified worker will corrupt the reading. Maren almost smiled. Not from amusement. From the shape of the trap being too familiar. She is uncertified, Corven said to the court. Her stencil license was revoked after repeated unauthorized marks. Rhydan looked at her. Maren did not soften the answer. Revoked after I marked the crown approach. When? 3 weeks before your decree. The words moved through the court like a blade under cloth. Rhydan's marked throat tightened. You warned before I signed. I filed before you signed. Corven stepped in. And the office rejected it as visual contamination. Maren looked at Rhydan. Because your reform gave him that word. The clerk returned with 2 books, one bound in cracked black hide, the other in fresh crimson leather. The old forge code smelled of ash and oil. The coronation reform smelled of wax. Rhydan opened the old book first. Maren did not need to see the page. She had copied that section by hand after her first year in the lower forge, back when she still believed rules saved people because they were written down. Rhydan read, where fire pressure cannot be seen, the marked witness may halt royal passage until the death line is named. Corven said, obsolete. Rhydan read the next line. The marked witness must not be silenced, bound, removed, or overruled while a warning stencil is active. The silence clamp on Maren's wrist seemed suddenly louder than any bell. Foreign witnesses looked at it, then at Corven, then at Rhydan. Rhydan's eyes lowered to the black brass ring. Who ordered the clamp? Corven bowed his head. I did, under martial authority. Using which reform? Corven did not answer. Maren answered for him. Visual contamination control. Rhydan opened the Crimson Reform book. His own seal sat on the first page. He read the clause in full, because Maren made sure not to look away. Any worker mark, object, stencil, warning, gesture, or visible obstruction that disturbs royal image before alliance witnesses may be restrained under martial authority. The word gesture burned worse than the clamp. It meant even pointing at danger had been made punishable. Rhydan looked at Maren's half-healed wrist. She gave him no pity for seeing late. Unlock it, he said. Corven hesitated. Rhydan's voice dropped. Now. The marshal removed the black brass ring from Maren's wrist. Her fingers opened fully for the first time that morning. Blood returned in a slow, bright ache. She did not thank either man. She reached toward the old pressure witness stencil. Corven moved. If she touches it, she can rewrite the pattern. Maren stopped with her hand above the iron. No, it will not take new warning from me. It will only return the mark it carried before you hammered it beneath a crown. She pressed her burned fingertips to the stencil. The iron plate answered, not with light alone. With names. Perrin-Holt appeared first, burned around one thumb mark. Tama Helt next, Joss Merritt. Then more, circling the crown pedestal in a widening ring of red letters. 43 names, each tied to a pressure fork, each death placed exactly where the clean path had been polished over it. The foreign houses stared at the map of the dead. Corven's face emptied. Maren kept her hand down, though tears of pain blurred the floor. The coronation path was never clean. It was cleaned. Rhydan looked at the old code, then at the stencil, then at the crown waiting beside the exposed plate. He spoke to the witnesses, not to Maren. The forge walk is halted. Corven turned. Rhydan continued. No alliance is signed, no crown is worn, no report leaves this court until every death line is read. For a moment, it sounded like victory. Then the warning crown changed. The red death lines around the pedestal bent inward, crossing through the 43 names toward a point beneath the royal arch. A second pattern surfaced below the first. Not a crown this time. A closed door. Maren's breath caught. Corven saw it too, and whispered the first honest word he had spoken all day. No. Beneath the door mark, a line burned through the iron. Archive kiln sealed with witnesses inside. A young record clerk backed away from the exposed plate until his heel touched a red breath line. The mark flared. He froze with both hands lifted, terrified to move, terrified not to. Maren crossed the distance before the guards did and caught his sleeve, pulling him back one careful step. Do not cross a line because the court is afraid to name it, she said. The clerk's face had gone white. The archive kiln, he whispered. I carried sealed bundles there last month. Corven Malric turned on him so smoothly it looked almost gentle. Careful, Sivan. The clerk shut his mouth. There was power in that kind of softness. Maren had heard it in inspection halls, after work deaths, before records changed. Careful meant remember who writes your wages. Careful meant the dead cannot protect you. Rhydan Vale looked from the closed door mark, burning through the iron plate, to the record clerk. What bundles? Corven answered first. Retired inspection copies, damaged reports, outdated path sketches. The archive kiln stores unstable papers until they can be reduced without smoke loss. Maren's burned fingers curled despite the pain. Reduced. A preservation term, Corven said. A burial term when you put people with the papers. The foreign witnesses stirred. Corven faced them, not Maren. The stencil has now produced a second theatrical shape. A crown, then a door. If we continue indulging this woman, the entire coronation will become a lower forge ghost play. Rhydan's red throat mark pulsed once. Open the archive kiln. Corven bowed his head. I cannot recommend that. I did not ask for recommendation. The archive kiln is sealed for document curing. Opening it during active heat cycle could destroy the contents. Then stop the heat cycle. Corven's eyes flicked toward the forge officials near the rear wall. Maren saw one of them lower his hand from a brass lever. Too late. The floor beneath the royal arch gave a low metal groan. Somewhere below the walkway, a kiln had begun to breathe. Maren stepped to the edge of the closed-door mark. The lines were not decorative. They were pressure paths, drawn by witnesses trapped near heat, hands pressed against iron. She traced the air above them without touching the floor. Archive kiln sealed with witnesses inside, she said. Not old witnesses, living ones. Corven laughed, but no one joined him. Convenient. Maren looked at the clerk. Sivan. The boy flinched. Did the bundles speak? His eyes filled with tears. Corven said, answer carefully. Rhydan turned. Marshal Malric, he said, and the quiet in his voice became more dangerous than a shout. You will not instruct witnesses in my court again. The word witnesses cut deeper than guards. Sivan swallowed. I heard knocking. A noblewoman gasped behind her veil. Corven's face sharpened. Rats in the paper ducks. I heard names, Sivan whispered. They were calling through the lower vents. Perrin's widow, 2 stencil apprentices, a furnace mason. I thought they were being questioned. Maren closed her eyes once. Not grief yet. Grief would slow her hand. She opened them and looked at Rhydan. Read your reform again. His face changed. Not surprise. Fear of recognition. He opened the crimson coronation book still lying beside the old forge code. The red marks on his arm stretched when his hand passed over the page, as if the stencil already knew which line had done harm. Rhydan read, "Any witness, worker, clerk, mark Beshans, or report holder causing visual contamination before alliance signing may be removed from the coronation path, pending private review." Maren's voice was cold. "Private review," Corven said. "Necessary during unstable ceremony." "Where?" Rhydan read the next line. His mouth went still. "Archive holding chambers." The foreign houses understood before the court did. Their eyes moved from the crown pedestal to the hidden door mark, then to the marshal who had called every warning a stain. Maren looked at Rhydan, and whatever heat had passed between them earlier turned to iron. "Your decree did not only scrub marks," she said. "It gave him a place to put the people who made them. He accepted that without defense. It did not absolve him. It made him useful for one more breath." "Show me the kiln door," he said. Maren moved first. The warning crown shifted as she stepped, its red forks dimming under her safe path and flaring where the stone wanted blood. She led them beneath the royal arch, not across the center, but along the old worker edge, where soot remained in seams the polishers had missed. At the back of the arch stood a bronze panel carved with dragon laurels. To foreign eyes, it looked ceremonial. To Maren, the lower hinge marks were wrong. Doors that only decorated did not sweat copper along the bottom. She pressed her freed wrist against the seam. The old stencil law answered with pain. Red lines burned around the panel. A closed door. A breath mark. A warning fork pointed downward. Inside, something struck the bronze. Once, twice. Then a woman's voice came through, cracked and furious. "Maren Voss, if that is you, do not let him burn the reports." Corven moved for the lever. Rhydan caught him by the collar and slammed him against the carved stone. The court erupted. Corven's mask of obedience vanished for the length of one breath. "If you open that kiln, you lose the alliance, the coronation, and every forge route before winter." Rhydan's marked hand tightened at his throat. "If I leave it closed, I lose the right to call this a kingdom." Maren did not look at him. She was listening to the door. "How many inside?" she called. "A pause." Then the woman answered, weaker. 17 living, 6 dead, and the original walkway death maps. The bronze panel began to glow. Corven smiled through the grip at his collar. Maren felt the pressure change beneath her feet. Not from the door. From above. The crown pedestal behind them rang once, and the ceremonial crown flared with sudden white heat. Corven had not needed the lever. He had set the purge to answer the crown itself. The woman behind the bronze screamed. Maren turned as the archive kiln seal lit red. "Document curing complete in 3 minutes." The first foreign house withdrew its seal before anyone reached the archive door. A silver token clattered onto the signing table, then another, then a third. The sound traveled through the forge court with more terror than shouting. "Ore routes, winter feed, border dragon iron." All of it falling piece by piece, while the bronze panel behind the royal arch glowed red around trapped voices. Rhydan Vale did not look at the signing table. Corven Malric did. That was how Maren knew he had counted on this. "The alliance is breaking," Corven said, still pinned against the carved stone by the Dragon King's hand. "Open that kiln, and you trade 17 lower witnesses for every border dragon that starves before winter." Maren moved toward the bronze panel. "Do not make the living inside this door bargain against dragons they have spent their lives feeding." Corven's smile thinned. "Sentiment is not governance." "No," Maren said, "but burning witnesses is not governance either." The archive seal brightened. 2 minutes. The words appeared in red heat along the bronze hinge. Inside, someone coughed hard enough for the sound to scrape through metal. Rhydan released Corven only to step between him and the crown pedestal. "How is the curing cycle stopped?" Corven straightened his coat. "By completing coronation transfer." Maren's head turned. The marshal spread his hands, as if saddened by law rather than sharpened by it. "The archive kiln answers to crown heat during ceremony. Once His Majesty wears the crown, the curing flame stabilizes, and the sealed reports are reduced into permanent summary record." "Reduced," Maren said again. "Summarized," Corven corrected. "Burned." The woman behind the door struck the bronze from inside. "He did it to the south reports. Do not let him summarize us." Rhydan looked at the crown, waiting near the exposed plate. Its white heat had begun to pulse like a living throat. A foreign lord spoke from the rail. If the king refuses the crown before witness completion, the alliance cannot sign. Another added, if he accepts it while people burn under the arch, no house can trust his forge law. Corven bowed toward them. Then you see the sabotage. Maren Voss has staged a choice in which the crown loses either way. Maren turned fully toward him. No, you staged a walkway where the crown could only stand by stepping over the dead. For the first time, Corven's expression sharpened beyond polish. And you think truth feeds armies? No, she said, but lies make workers die feeding them. Rhydan reached for the ceremonial crown. Maren's stomach clenched. The warning marks on his arm flared so violently that smoke rose from the edge of his collar. The death line at his throat brightened. For a breath, every stencil strip hovering over the walkway turned toward him like knives remembering a body. Do not, Maren said. He paused. She stepped close enough that the heat from his marked skin stung her face. Do not crown yourself over a closed door and call it rescue. His eyes met hers. There was fury there, not at her, at the shape of the trap, at the court, at his own seal. But fury was still not payment. Then tell me what opens it, he said. No, she answered. Read what opens it. The distinction landed. Rhydan turned to the old forge code still open near the plate. The red lines on his arm dragged across the air as he moved, mapping the danger with each breath. He read from the old law. Where a warning door seals over living witnesses, crown heat may not reduce record until a marked witness enters the threshold and names the first death. Corven laughed once, conveniently impossible. Her license was revoked. Rhydan opened the crimson reform beside it. Maren already knew what he would find. He read silently first. That was worse. Then aloud. Any revoked stencil keeper may not stand as marked witness before foreign houses, royal court, or coronation authority. Corven's voice softened. Your Majesty, I followed the law you gave me. Maren looked at Rhydan. Do not look wounded, she said. You are reading a weapon with your name on the handle. The forge court went still. Rhydan accepted it. Then he lifted the crimson reform book and tore the page from its binding. A sound ripped through the court. Some nobles cried out as if he had cut flesh. Corven stepped forward. You cannot void a coronation reform mid-ceremony. Rhydan held the torn page over the exposed death plate. I can stand where it burns. He pressed the page onto the red iron. Fire swallowed the decree. The silence clamp mark around Maren's wrist burst open in a ring of heat, and the old pressure witness stencil above the plate rang like struck metal. Her license did not return with honor. It returned like work. Painful, necessary, late. The bronze archive door unlocked one inner notch. 1 minute. Maren crossed to it. Rhydan followed. She stopped him with one raised hand. No, I am opening it. You are marked from wrist to throat. One step into that pressure, and the stencil will finish, proving what it already knows. I can hold dragon fire. This is not flame, her voice lowered. That has been the point from the beginning. The woman inside shouted, Maren, the maps are chained to the back grate. If the curing flame reaches them first, the old death lines go with us. Maren set her burned palm against the threshold. The door gave her the first death in a rush of heat. Perrinholt. His name burned across her palm, bright and brutal. She did not cry out. The first lock opened, then Tamahelt. Second lock, Jos Merit. Third, Corven moved behind them. Not toward the lever, toward the signing table. He snatched one withdrawn foreign seal and slammed it into the crown pedestal's side slot. The crown flared white. The archive door slammed inward, not open, but half open, leaving a gap just wide enough for a body to pass and too narrow for two to return together. Corven's voice cut through the heat. Emergency witness preservation. If the marked woman wants her proof, let her join it. Rhydan lunged. Too late. The floor beneath Maren dropped into the archive threshold. She fell through the half-open door into red smoke, landing hard on hot iron among coughing witnesses, dead bodies, and chained maps burning at the edges. Above her, the bronze door began to close. Corven's face appeared through the narrowing gap. Now, he said, let the warning decide whether it saves the woman or the records. The archive kiln did not smell like paper. It smelled like breath held too long. Maren landed on one shoulder and rolled against a hot iron grate, pain flashing white through her ribs. Around her, smoke pressed low over the floor, crawling between bodies, ledgers, broken stencil frames, and 17 living witnesses who had been packed into the chamber with reports meant to outlive them only as ash. 6 did not move. The woman who had called through the door gripped Maren's sleeve. Her hair was gray at the roots and singed at the ends, her eyes red from heat. "Maps!" she rasped. "Back grate." Maren pushed herself upright. The chained maps hung on the far wall beneath a curing vent already glowing orange. Sheets of old pressure vellum, black copper stencil plates, witness overlays, deathline copies, the original walkway records. The proof that the coronation path had not merely covered accidents, but had been designed over repeated deaths and polished until the dead looked like silence. A man near the door coughed blood into his hand. "Can you open it?" Maren looked up. The bronze door above had almost closed. Through the narrowing gap, she saw Rhydan's marked arm force itself between the panels. Red warning lines flared from his wrist to his throat as the pressure touched him, but he held the door from shutting. Not wide enough to save everyone, wide enough to buy work. "Get the living to the threshold," Maren said. The gray-haired woman stared at her. "And the maps?" Maren looked at the chained records. A curing flame licked the lower edge of the first sheet. She understood Corven's choice now. A body could crawl through the gap. A bundle of records could not. He had wanted the warning to become a cruelty: save the living and lose the proof, or save the proof and let witnesses die. Maren took the nearest broken stencil frame from the floor. Its copper edge was split, but the pressure cuts still held their shape. She pressed it against the hot iron wall. Nothing. Her license had returned, but the kiln was under crown heat. It would not release records to a hand that could not carry them out. Above, Rhydan's voice came through clenched pain. "Maren." She did not look up. "Do not command me from a doorway you helped seal," she said. The witnesses froze at the sharpness of it. Rhydan did not answer. "Good." He used the silence to push harder. The gap widened by less than a hand. "Enough." Maren turned to the living, one at a time. "Crawl under his arm. Do not touch the red marks. Those are not wounds. They are lines telling you where not to breathe." A young stencil apprentice helped the first witness toward the door. Rhydan reached down with his unmarked hand and dragged the man through. Then another. Then a woman whose feet had burned through her work shoes. Then the clerk who could no longer stand. Every time Rhydan pulled someone out, the lines on his arm brightened. Every time he held the door, the old warning law marked him deeper. Maren moved to the chained maps. The curing vent roared. One pressure vellum curled into flame. She slapped it out with her bare palm and screamed, despite herself. The gray-haired woman caught her wrist. "You cannot carry all of them." "I know." "Then choose the oldest." "No." Maren's voice broke around smoke, not surrender. "That is how they erased the rest." She looked at the dead. 6 bodies lay near the side grate, each with blackened fingers. Each one a witness who had been sealed inside because they knew where a line had been scrubbed. They had not died for a summary. Maren pressed her burned hand to the first chained map. The old stencil law answered in her skin. Not kindly. The death lines lifted off the vellum and burned across her forearm. She nearly collapsed. The gray-haired woman swore and tried to pull her away. Maren shook her head. "Hold me still." "Maren, hold me still or he wins." The woman held her. Maren touched the second map. Then the third. The kiln filled with red light. Pressure forks crawled over Maren's arms, shoulders, throat, and collarbone. Breath lines crossed her ribs. Half-moon death marks curved along her back beneath torn cloth. Each map left the vellum and entered the nearest living witness capable of carrying it. Not chosen. Used. Below. By pain. By the dead demanding shape. Above, through the gap, foreign voices shouted. Corven's voice cut through them, furious now. "Pull the king back! She is infecting herself with kiln contamination." Rhydan's answer came low and brutal. "Touch the door, and I burn the hand." Maren touched the final plate. It resisted. This one was not old death record. It was a martial route overlay, sealed in black wax, chained separately behind the rest. When her fingers met it, the kiln heat went cold. Letters burned across the plate. Private correction path. Authorized removals before coronation. Names followed. Not only worker names, witness names, report holders, stencil apprentices. The gray-haired woman beside Maren inhaled sharply. That is the removal list. Maren's vision blurred. Whose seal? The wax cracked. A mark appeared at the bottom. Corven Malric's martial zeal. Then another. Smaller. Oda. Crown review accepted. The chamber spun once around Maren. Not Rhydan's coronation decree this time. A separate approval, a hidden one. Someone above the marshal had reviewed the removals before the ceremony. Maren ripped the plate from its chain as the last witness crawled toward the door. The curing flame surged. Rhydan's arm buckled in the gap. Maren shoved the gray-haired woman upward first, then pushed the black plate after her. Only then did she climb. Rhydan caught her wrist. The red death map on Maren's skin met the red warning marks on his hand. Every stencil in the forge court rang at once. The archive door burst open. Maren fell onto the coronation walkway at his feet, covered from throat to wrist in burning death lines. The foreign houses stared. Corven stared at the black plate sliding across the floor. The wax seal finished melting. A final line appeared beneath the crown review mark. Approved by the royal hand before Rhydan Vale's coronation. The black plate did not cool after the seal finished melting. It slid across the polished coronation path, leaving a red line behind it like a cut in the stone. No guard bent to pick it up. No noble asked whether the mark could be cleaned. The foreign houses stared at the sentence burning through the wax. Approved by the royal hand before Rhydan Vale's coronation. Corven Malric recovered first. Of course he did. A man who had buried warnings for years knew how to stand beside a grave and call it architecture. You see, he said, turning to the foreign witnesses with both palms open. This is why the court must stop. The removal list was reviewed by royal authority. The marshal office acted within sanctioned preparation. Any further spectacle only proves that Maren Voss has turned forge law against the crown itself. Maren pushed herself upright on one elbow. Every death line on her skin burned when she moved. Pressure forks crossed her forearms. Breath warnings climbed her throat. Half-moon marks wrapped her shoulders like red iron laid under flesh. Rhydan reached toward her. She looked at his hand. He stopped before touching her. That small restraint mattered less than it should have. She could not afford gratitude, while the court still searched for a cleaner lie. Do not defend the crown, she said. Read the hand. Rhydan looked at the black plate. Corven's eyes sharpened. The foreign lord in the silver veil leaned forward. What does she mean? Maren forced herself to stand. The gray-haired witness from the archive kiln, still coughing, took her elbow. Not to steady a weak woman. To keep the marked witness upright long enough to finish the record. The royal hand is not a phrase, Maren said. It is an office. Rhydan's face hardened. He knew then, not the whole truth, enough to dread the rest. Corven said, ceremonial language. No. Maren pointed to the plate. The royal hand carries the authority to review coronation preparation when the heir has not yet worn the crown. If the approval was lawful, the hand mark will answer the old stencil. Corven smiled. Then ask it. Too easy. Maren looked at the plate again and understood why he was smiling. The line did not say Dragon King. It did not say Rhydan Vale. It said royal hand, a lesser office, a place to move blame without losing the crown. But warning law was older than offices, older than polished titles, older than men who hid behind them. She stepped onto the red line the plate had left. Rhydan's warning marks flared. Maren, he said, do not speak as if I am about to fall because you finally see the edge. She knelt beside the plate and pressed her marked palm to the cooling wax. The death lines on her body answered all at once. The court vanished under pain. For a heartbeat, she heard the archive kiln again. Fists on bronze, reports burning, workers calling names through smoke, while officials outside prepared a coronation. Then the plate spoke. Not in Corven's voice. Not in hers. A woman's voice emerged, brittle with age and command. Remove visible death warnings from the crown approach. Classify dissenting stencil keepers as contamination risk. The heir must inherit a stable forge. The court shifted. Rhydan's eyes went black gold. Corven bowed his head, but not in shame. The late royal hand Vale served the crown for 40 years. Rhydan turned slowly. My aunt died before dawn. She approved the removals before her death, Corven said. Her authority was valid. Maren saw the trap complete itself. Dead woman, valid office, crown blood, a signature that could not be cross-examined. Corven had not only used Rhydan's decree, he had buried the killing inside a dying royal hand's final authority, then waited for coronation to make it untouchable. Rhydan looked at the plate. Play the full record. Corven's voice sharpened. That is unnecessary. Full record. Maren pressed harder. The wax burned under her palm. The woman's voice returned, weaker this time, interrupted by breath. Corven, if the old marks remain, the foreign houses will see the approach failed before Rhydan wears the crown. Corven's voice answered from the plate, younger, smooth, patient. Then we do not leave marks. What of the witnesses? Private review. What of the deaths? Summary after coronation. What of Maren Voss? A pause. Then Corven said, she will not be allowed to point. The silence clamp around Maren's wrist, now broken and lying near the path, cracked in half. The foreign houses murmured openly now. Rhydan's marked hand closed around nothing. Maren lifted her palm from the plate. You did not obey a royal hand. You guided a dying woman toward the words you needed. Corven's face cooled. I preserved a crown. You preserved a walkway. I preserved winter ore, dragon hunger, border fire, the things rulers understand. His eyes cut to Rhydan. Tell her, Your Majesty. Tell your marked little witness that kingdoms do not survive by leaving every ugly truth visible. The court waited. This time, Maren did not look at Rhydan. She looked at the foreign houses, at the workers dragged from the kiln, at the exposed plate beneath the crown pedestal, at the old forge code still open like a wound. If ugly truth breaks an alliance, she said, the alliance was built to step over bodies. The Northern Lord removed his silver veil. His face was older than his voice had sounded. Our houses will not sign over hidden death lines. Corven's jaw tightened. But, the Lord continued, we will witness a lawful correction if the Dragon King submits the coronation path to old forge code. Rhydan turned toward him. The Lord did not soften the condition. Before the crown is worn. Corven moved, not toward the plate, toward the crown. He seized it from the pedestal and drove its burning rim down onto the exposed warning map. White flame erupted. The names around the plate flickered. Maren lunged, but the heat threw her back. Corven shouted over the roar. If the crown accepts the corrected summary first, old code cannot bind the ceremony. Rhydan stepped into the fire. The red marks on his throat blazed like a collar closing. Maren saw what the stencil was warning him of. Not death at the pedestal. A choice. If he took the crown now, the old law died under ceremony. If he refused, the Forge Alliance might still fail. Rhydan reached for the crown. Maren's voice cut through the fire. Do not wear it over them. His hand stopped above the burning gold. Beneath the crown, 43 names began to vanish. The old forge code slammed shut by itself. The sound cut through the white flame like a verdict. Rhydan Vale's hand hovered above the burning crown, close enough that the warning marks on his throat climbed toward his jaw. Beneath the crown's rim, the red names on the exposed plate flickered in and out, not erased yet, not saved. Corven Malric had forced the ceremony into its final cruelty. Wear the crown, and the dead became summary. Refuse it, and the Alliance might starve the border dragons before winter. Maren Voss dragged herself to one knee. The death lines covering her skin pulsed with every name losing shape beneath the flame. Move the crown, she said. Corven laughed, breathless and bright. She still thinks safety outranks sovereignty. No, Maren said. I think sovereignty that needs hidden bodies under it is already ash. Rhydan looked at the crown, then at the exposed plate, then at the foreign houses watching to see whether a Dragon King would choose ore roots over the dead who had fed his forge. He closed his hand around the crown. The white flame bit into his palm. This time he did not lift it toward his head. He lifted it away from the names. The entire walkway shuddered. Corven shouted, If you break the right, the old code binds the crown before witness signing. Rhydan's voice came through the heat, low and terrible. Then let it bind me first. He set the crown not on his head, not on the pedestal, but on the black stone floor beside the old forge code. lower than the plate, lower than the death map, lower than the names. The white flame went red. Every stencil strip above the walkway rang. The 43 names returned at once, burning clear around the exposed iron. Perrin Holt, Tama Helt, Joss Merritt, and the others' ceremony had pressed beneath silence. The archive survivors began to speak the names aloud before any clerk was ordered to write. One by one, workers, apprentices, widows, and furnace masons gave the dead back to the court. Corven stepped backward. "Your Majesty," he said, no longer smooth, "you have placed the coronation beneath worker law." Rhydan turned to him. "No, I found it there." Maren forced herself upright. Pain tore through the marks on her skin, but she stayed standing. She had not carried the maps out of the kiln to collapse before Corven could rename them again. "Read the correction," she said. Rhydan looked at her. Not wounded, not asking. Ready to be used. He opened the old forge code and read where the red stencil light pointed. When a crown path is found above an unrecorded death zone, the coronation is void until the dead are named, the pressure is marked, and the witness who warned is restored before the same court that silenced them. Corven's face hardened. "That law predates the alliance system." "Good," Maren said. "It survived long enough to accuse you." Rhydan turned the page toward the foreign witnesses. "Will your houses witness old forge correction?" The northern lord without his veil looked at the exposed plate, then at Maren's burned arms, then at the crown lying below the dead. "We will witness correction," he said. "We will not sign a forge alliance until every death zone remains visible." One by one, the foreign houses placed their withdrawn seals back on the table, not as signatures, but as witness weights. Corven saw the shape of his defeat and tried to turn it into martyrdom. "I preserve the forge you are all so eager to judge," he said. "Ore does not move through pity. Dragons do not eat remorse. I removed ugly marks so foreign houses would not see weakness." Maren stepped toward him. The warning lines on her skin brightened near his boots. "No," she said. "You removed witnesses." She lifted the black removal plate from the floor. Its melted wax cracked again. The stencil law pulled the rest of the record from the metal. Names of those sealed in the archive kiln, dates of scrubbed death zones, paid revisions, false classifications, private orders, and Corven's own hand beside each one. The late royal hand's voice returned once more, thin and fading, followed by Corven's calmer voice guiding every answer until approval sounded like law. The court heard him teach a dying woman how to bury danger. Rhydan looked to the forge guards. Safety Marshal Corven Malric is stripped of office. He will stand trial under old forge code, coronation law, and every witness name he sealed away. Corven's mouth curved. "And the decree that armed me?" Rhydan did not flinch. He picked up the crimson reform book bearing his seal and carried it to the exposed plate. "Read it against me first," he said to the clerks. "Every clause, every death it enabled, every restraint it made lawful. My coronation remains void until the lower forge accepts the correction." A murmur spread through the court, too large to belong to nobles alone. Maren watched him set his own decree onto the red iron. It burned slowly. Not destroyed, recorded. That mattered. Destruction let kings pretend they had never signed. Burning into record made the wound visible. The silence clamp pieces near Maren's feet melted into a black ring. Rhydan bent, picked them up with his burned hand, and placed them beside the decree. "No marked witness in my forge will be bound for warning again," he said. Maren's throat tightened despite herself. She hated that truth could arrive late and still sound like something she had once needed. She did not forgive him. Forgiveness would have been too small for 43 names, 6 archive dead, 17 living witnesses, and every worker taught to make danger beautiful enough for noble eyes. Instead, she walked to the stencil box. Its iron sides, unfolded like burned wings, lowered toward her. The old stencils settled back inside, except for one strip of blackened copper. It hovered over the coronation path, waiting. Maren took it. Her burned fingers shook around its edge. Then she knelt at the first visible death zone and pressed the stencil to the polished stone. A red warning mark burned permanent into the royal walkway. Not hidden, not decorative, not delayed, until after ceremony. Permanent. The workers behind her began to move. One by one, they took stencils and marked the path. Pressure forks, breath lines, Death crescents, witness marks, safe edges, forbidden seams. The Dragon Forge Walkway changed under their hands from a clean royal illusion into a map that could keep people alive. Rhydan stepped forward. The mark on his throat flared once. Maren did not look up. Not there. He stopped immediately. A foreign witness saw it. So did Corven. So did every Forge official who had ever mistaken obedience for order. Rhydan looked down at the line before his boots. "Where may I stand?" he asked. Maren pressed another mark into the stone. "Where the warning allows," she said, "and where everyone can see you listening." He moved to the safe side of the line. Behind her, the crown remained on the floor until the last name was read. Only then did the walkway cool. Not clean. Safe. And for the first time in Rhydan Vale's reign, the royal path was ugly enough to tell the truth.